Today we are going to talk about plasticine clay and resin jewelry and how it relates to creating a series of pieces and marketable jewelry. The essential question is, what is a series and why is it important in creating marketable jewelry? And why does plasticine or resin work well as a medium for this process? You can see that there's a link to Cornell notes in the bottom of this slide that you can use to help you remember parts of the process. The learning targets for this assignment are: I understand the tools, techniques, and procedures of using plasticine clay in order to create a series of jewelry that is well crafted and shiny. I understand all safety protocols to protect my body and others during the plasticine and resin processes, and I understand how to create a plasticine jewelry series that follows the requirements and will be sold. Polymer or plasticine clay is a type of clay that has oil in it. There are several types of designs you can create when using plasticine or polymer clay that have a very professional look. Here are some types of designs that you can create using plasticine clay. The requirements for this assignment are: you must create 10 pieces of jewelry that are recognizable as a series. A series meaning a group of pieces that look similar in some way. They do not necessarily look exactly the same. For the style choice, you get to decide the pattern and style. However, be warned that some things take more time to create than others, and you'll be responsible for coming in during enrichment or study hall or taking things home in order to get things done on time. There should be areas of contrast where the viewer or customer is able to see different details in the design. The piece must be functional or can be worn on the body. It should also be professionally finished. The pieces should have strong craftsmanship where there are no evident flaws in the design and they are shiny and professional looking. The plasticine clay is normally stored beneath the counter to the left of the sink in the classroom side of the metals classroom. There are several different tools that you'll need for the plasticine clay assignment, such as rollers, thickness sticks, clay boards, paddles, metal leaf, glitter or iridescent flake, texture rollers, shape cutters, hole cutters, the metal clay cutter, a fettling knife, double ball styluses, modeling tools, and tweezers. There are also pre-made bezel cups that make this process easier in terms of creating your series of pieces. Other things you may need are things like acrylic paint and brushes, and Sculpey liquid clay and glue. When you are working with the plasticine clay, the first thing you'll need to do is warm up the clay by kneading it between your hands in order to make it workable. There are several ways to work with the plasticine clay. A few of them are described here, but you can always experiment and find more ways of working than what we've described. Regardless of the technique you'll choose, you do have to roll out the clay on a plastic cutting board that is taped to the table. You should also cover the clay both on top and on bottom so that the clay does not stick to the table. After you've rolled the clay out, there will be other techniques that you can do that we will show you in different videos that will come along. Once you have created your pieces, you will have to fire them in a 200-degree oven or kiln. It's important that you use fire retardant gloves to protect your hands, and you need to tie your hair back as you'll be pulling things in and out of a hot kiln. The plasticine pieces should be put in the metal trays in the back of the room by the kilns. There should also be a piece of paper or parchment paper inside those trays so the clay does not stick to the tray and it's easily removed once the clay comes out of the kiln. In terms of firing, you need to fire the piece for 10 to 20 minutes at 1/4 inch of thickness. You'll know the pieces are done when they no longer feel oily to the touch. Be careful though, because you could burn your work. The next step, once your pieces come out of the kiln, is you're going to be putting resin on them. What you need to understand about the resin is the resin has two parts. There is epoxy resin itself and the hardener, which need to be mixed in a 1-to-1 ratio. You do have to mix it for 45 seconds, and you'll have about 40 minutes to use the resin before it becomes hard. Here you can see a person is applying the resin to the pieces with a stick. Notice that the pieces are also on a wax paper covered piece of mat board that is also on the table. When we are trying to dry the resin, we will put the pieces in the top row of lockers in the middle of the classroom. You'll notice the lockers used for that because there will be signs on them. When you are finished with the plasticine clay, you need to clean up your process. You will have to use a paper towel to clean out any leftover resin in the measuring cups, and it's very important to use acetone to wash the cups out when you are finished. If for whatever reason you do have overflow with the resin, you will have to let it harden, and then you'll have to take a Dremel tool in order to clean up any resin that has spilled over past the design. If that happens, you may also have to re-drill holes with the Dremel press that is by the window in the classroom. The last step is actually creating functional jewelry by using findings. Notice that the findings are normally stored in the number 3 cabinet in the classroom, and you should already know how to do that because of processes we've done in the past. In addition, you will be required to list all of the different items you've used for your processes so that we understand how much the pieces should be sold for. At this point, you should be able to answer the essential question from the beginning of the presentation.